Alrighty, everyone, welcome back to the Thanksgiving holiday special of Ask the King here on DSPGaming. I welcome you all back. This is part 2. If you missed part 1, be sure to check it out on demand if you did not see it. But this is part 2. For those who have been live on stream waiting, welcome back. Now, fully in my Marty McFly vest for the rest of the stream. Thank you guys so far for your support, especially again because this is my only stream of the day. I do appreciate everyone supporting the stream in any way. 2 last names. Just became a channel member. Thank you to 2 last names for that support. I appreciate that. The Thanksgiving food is a roasting. That turkey breast is in the oven roasting. In fact, my wife's just about to take it out and start basting it. I was like, All right, let's continue. Let's jump right back into the questions. Our next question is from Angel Ray Fernandez, who says, DSP, I hope you're doing good. I'd like to know your opinion about the entire YouTube journey. If you could have known the way your content creator career would go, would you have still decided to make it your full-time job back in the day when you got laid off in Connecticut? Thanks for putting up with all the negativity and never giving up. I never made that decision. That decision was never made. That decision was really the only thing I could do. So let's take you back in time 12 years. All right? In 2010, the world was definitely different, and definitely the climate of employment was very different. In Connecticut, all right, the job selection was not very good. Most companies were actually leaving Connecticut at the time. They did not like that state as a place to do business. A lot of downscaling, a lot of laying off. There was actually a recession at that time, kind of. Not a full recession, but a partial one, right? And because of that, the whole job scope situation did not look good. Now, keep in mind, I was working at a helicopter company. I'd worked there for 4.5 years. I was making a salary. And based on that level of salary, I had made financial decisions in my life, such as, I can buy this condo, right? I can do this, I could do this. So I had debt in my name as a result of making these decisions and the amount of money that I was making at the job. And they laid me off out of nowhere. And I looked at the job industry. You know, I did get a severance package from them that lasted like 2 months. It was very, very small, and it was not very good either. It wasn't like full pay. It was kind of lame what they gave me. So I was looking all around at, other places to work. There was absolutely positively nothing in that sector that I was going to get another job. It was just not possible. So I was looking at, basically starting over, having to go back to like the retail industry, which would have paid, I'm not kidding, probably half as much as what I was making at the helicopter company, to the point where I might have had to do like 2 jobs just to make ends meet and keep the condo I was living in and everything. And it was not a very good prospect. So if you remember, I had already been a YouTuber as a part-time hobby from late 2008 through late 2010, about 2 years. I've been doing it as a hobby. And I said, on a whim, is there any way I could do this as a job? Now, keep in mind, back then, you could not just monetize gameplay videos. You had to go through a third-party partner network in order to monetize gameplay videos. What you could monetize was vlogs and other styles of videos. So, through various attempts, trying to monetize my vlogs, trying to go to Blip TV, and then eventually partnering with Cinema, it did become my job. But that was never my intention. It was never anything I wanted to do. It was basically like, this is my hobby that I just thought was funny. Hey, can I make a few bucks doing it? And then eventually, I ended up making good money doing it because people supported me on the internet. I was viewed basically like an underdog. I wasn't someone known for having a high skill level in any kind of a certain genre of game outside of maybe old school Street Fighter. But unlike others who are like gurus or walkthrough guys or, trick shot montage guys, I was basically just a Joe Nobody who had funny commentary, and people liked that and supported that. They saw me as the alternate underdog. No support from any company. I had no budget to make anything. I didn't have a bunch of fucking video editors or a filming studio. It was just me dicking around with video games. But to answer your question, if I could have known the way that my content would have been over the years, would I have decided to make it my job back in the day? I mean, here's the thing. As I've said, even through all the huge stress, negativity, and adversity thrown my way, I can still tell you to this day, this is the best job I've ever had. Being my own boss, and the fact that knowing that you guys support me no matter where I go and what I do, means a lot. It does. I like the fact that it's Thanksgiving and I can say, let's do a half day where I do a fun stream with you, but I can actually spend the rest of the day with my family. Black Friday, let's do a super special fun event where we just react to ads instead of me having to go grind out at some fucking job or some retail or some restaurant. You know what I'm saying? It's amazing. I'm so lucky to be in this situation, to be able to have this kind of flexibility that I do, and I hope you guys understand that. I know how lucky I am, okay? The only thing that I would have been done different is not had so much crossover between personal and the business, meaning I should have kept a work-life balance. I should have had a private life with friendships, relationships, financials, and everything kept separate from what I actually did on the internet. I didn't do that. I completely melded the two. My friendships were also videos. My relationships were videos. My travel was a video. I talked everything about money up front. Like, I was Mr. Transparent, but what ended up happening was that blew up in my face. Over the years, a lot of people started to not like me for various different reasons, and now that everything's transparent, everything's out there to be used against me in any kind of a negative way. That was a pretty dumb thing. I wish I had never done that. Outside of that, you know, I also wish that I had maybe realized a little earlier how important streaming was, how important an interactive audience was. How dumb was I that I streamed for 4 years and ignored the audience? That's really bone dead, like brain dead stupid, right? Like, really dumb. I don't know what bone dead means, but brain dead makes sense. But it is what it is. As they say, hindsight's 20/20. Now I see those things. I didn't see them at the time. I'm very happy, you know, doing what I did. So, thank you for the question. Rugal Bernstein has asked a question. He says, Happy Thanksgiving, Phil. My question is, to what extent do glitches in games, should they be allowed in a competitive setting? Now, it's an interesting question for Rugal to be asking, because Rugal is actually someone who very much attended all my fighting game streams. And if you look at it in potential to, like, say, a fighting game with glitches, man, glitches have a storied history in competitive fighting games. I'm going to give you an example, okay? There's certain situations where game bugs can completely ruin a competitive game and need to be banned. There's other situations where glitch or game bug becomes so prevalent in competitive play, it literally becomes adopted as part of competitive play. So I'll give you two completely different examples. In Marvel vs. Capcom 2, there is a glitch with a character called Ruby Heart, where if you hold a certain combination of buttons and you do a certain combo or a certain special move in a certain way, all right, Ruby Heart will basically glitch the game and freeze it so that no one can complete the round. Now, what ends up happening is time runs out, and whoever has the most health wins the match, because the game basically couldn't continue to be played anymore. You see? That's game breaking. That's a known game exploit and bug that should not be allowed in competitive play, because the match wasn't over. You're essentially saying, oh, well, I have more health than you, match over. Freeze the game, you're forcing a win. It's not competitively earned, you just cheated. Okay? So that was always banned. The Ruby Heart glitch was always banned from Marvel vs. Capcom 2 competitive play. Now, allow me to give you another example. Capcom vs. SNK 2 is a fighting game that pits Street Fighter characters and other Capcom characters against SNK fighting characters, like guys from the King of Fighters franchise. In this franchise, or I should say in this particular game, CVS 2, there is a glitch, because there's a special move in the game called a roll. When you activate the roll, you move forward a little bit and you become temporarily invulnerable. The move is meant to advance you through fireballs, so people can't completely lock you down with zoning by throwing fireballs. You could roll through it. But people found out a glitch. If you're doing the motion for a special move and you input the button input for a roll during said special move, you add invulnerability to your special move as if you were rolling, but you never roll. So now whenever you do a move, it's completely invincible. Now, the thing is, that sounds like it's game breaking. It is. It literally changed the competitive face of CVS 2, but it became a fair tactic because everyone mastered how to do it. So now basically everyone was doing it. And in competitions, they said, hey, as long as everyone universally can do it, then it's allowed. So everyone did it. I don't understand the difference. Personally, I think roll canceling is kind of unfair. At the same time, how do you regulate it? When you roll cancel, the special move animation looks exactly the same as if you didn't do the roll cancel. So how would a judge watching the match even know if you did it or not? So it just became a well-adopted way to play the game. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, that's the situation with that. And, you know, the thing is, you take a look at certain games. Oh, someone found a wall glitch in a competitive first-person shooter where you could fuse yourself into the wall not get shot, but you can shoot someone through it. That's not fair. I remember people were doing stuff like that all the way back in like the original Team Fortress 2. Or not Team Fortress 2, excuse me, Counter-Strike, the original Counter-Strike. People were pulling off shit like that. So, I guess the question is, when you're trying to judge if a glitch should be allowed in competitive play, is it something that can be universally done by everyone and therefore it's fair because everyone has a chance to use it? And does it completely break the competitive nature of the game? If you're playing a game and the entire game comes to a halt because the glitch freezes the round or the game, that's not competitively fair. That should be banned. But if it's something that is a gameplay element that can be learned, adapted to, and everyone can kind of adjust to, then maybe it shouldn't be. And that's kind of how it's been over the years. So it depends on the caliber of the glitch and the nature of how it affects the game, in my opinion. Okay. Our next question is from user UE2PG4GT8P. That is a really unique YouTube name. And they asked the following. Happy Thanksgiving. My question is regarding the PlayStation VR 2. What are your thoughts on it, and do you think mainstream games can benefit from it? Thanks. What do I think of it? I think it's insanely overpriced. It's $500 to $600, right? That's the cost of the console. No, you should not have a peripheral for a console that costs the same price or more than the console. It's ludicrously expensive, okay? Way too expensive, in my opinion. I'm not saying that it's not worth that. I'm just saying that if you have technology that's so expensive, maybe it's not time for it yet, right? If you can't sell the peripheral for half the price of the console, then don't sell the peripheral. Okay? There's too much of a huge gap in the amount of people who'll be able to afford that. Okay? Now, I can't give you an opinion on PSVR 2 because I don't have one. It's not out yet. What I can give you is my honest opinion on PSVR 1. All right? The first month I owned PSVR 1, I loved it. I was playing games like the Batman VR game, the job game where it was like a job simulator, the game where it was a bunch of different experiences, like one you were underwater in a cage, then you were doing a heist, right? A crime heist. That was kind of unique. I played the on-rail shooter that was based off of Until Dawn. Remember that? I played so many games on it. There was a game that was kind of like, it seemed like it was the end of the world, but there was a monster after you, and come to find out it was this weird, scary game that was meant to be some virtual experience. I can't even explain it. I think at the end of the game you meet God or something like that, right? Something wild. And what I can tell you is every game was a little different with how it used VR. Some games were much better. Other games were absolutely terrible. And by the way, they all took place right here in this very room, in this office. Some games I was able to play fully, no problem. Some games I could play just right here sitting. Others, I had to stand up. Some games, we were very immersive. Others were just shitty. The controls would constantly fuck up, and you're breaking your immersion. You really like it. What I can tell you is that in the last game I played for it was Resident Evil 7. Now, I just played Resident Evil 7 as a new release, and I decided I was going to try a second run in VR. And although I would admit, looking at your enemy to shoot them and aim and fire is innovative, it didn't really add much to the overall experience. It didn't make it scarier. It didn't really feel like, oh, this is a better way to play. It just felt like a different way to play. You know what I'm saying? So by the end of my VR experience, the first month I was blown away. And then I started playing games that weren't so good. And then I started to get sick to my stomach. Then the thing's making my head sweat. And I'm like, dude, this is just not there yet. If this thing was like a light pair of glasses that was immersive and you could see VR and you weren't sweating and you weren't getting sick to your stomach. And by the way, if it didn't cost $600, then maybe that would have made sense. But the thing is just, it was so overpriced. It was a temporary high. Let's put it that way. For 1 month, I loved it. And then the gimmick wore off. It's kind of like, I hate to say it, when you get addicted to something that you like, after a while its effectiveness wears off, right? The more you drink, well, the more you're going to have to drink to get that buzz again. The more you do a drug, the more you're going to have to do that drug to get to that level of excitement again. The more you play VR, it's not that good anymore because I already saw this gimmick 400 times. It's not a big deal anymore. And the problem for me, there was not a single killer app. There was not one game or one application for the PSVR that was like, that's why you need it. Because if you missed out on that, you literally missed out on a changing experience. It really, nothing that I played on PSVR was like, wow, it blew my socks off. Groundbreaking, amazing experience. After that initial shock of, oh, you're there in person wears off, you know, I just didn't care anymore. And now they announced PSVR 2. I don't give a shit. I'm not spending $600 on a fucking thing that I'm going to use again a few times. And that's a waste of money. It really is. And keep in mind also, for someone like me, I'm an interactive streamer, right? I make my living talking with you, interacting with you, shouting out contributions. You literally can't do any of that with the headset on. You can't see shit. You're playing a video game in the game. I can't see my chat. I can't interact. So what's the fucking point? The moment I became an interactive streamer, I was like, I don't even need that. You know, like, what's the point? I'll never be able to enjoy it as much. But that's my take. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but we don't know because it's not out yet, right? There you go. Next question is from Stick Sandwich. Stick Sandwich asked the following. Well, by the way, it says Happy Thanksgiving. My question is, do you have special Thanksgiving traditions that you grew up with, and do you still do any of them? Thanksgiving, I usually spent at home with my close family. Never really got together with my extended family. That was usually reserved for Christmas. Traditionally, we would always have a turkey dinner. We would bake a turkey in the oven. My mom would stuff it. And it was funny because she would trick the kids. What she would do is she would make this stuffing and say, hey, I put sausage in it, so you're going to like it. So we would eat it. And then after we ate it, she would always say, oh, by the way, there's also gizzards and fucking innards of, you know, the organs of the turkey. I shoved those in there too and didn't tell you. So you probably ate some turkey heart and liver today. But I guess it's healthy for you. I don't know. We would usually have various different sides. Usually a veggie or two, like some corn or green beans. We always would have the jellied cranberry sauce. I never actually had whole berry cranberry sauce until I moved here. I literally always had jellied cranberry sauce until I tried out the whole berry here. Whole berry is pretty good too. I think they're both good. So I don't think either one's worse or better than the other. And it's usually some kind of sweet potatoes or yams, you know, whatever is available. So turkey, some kind of sweet potatoes, some kind of veggie, rolls with butter, and stuffing out of the turkey, and jellied cranberry sauce was usually our spread that we would have for Thanksgiving. And yes, usually we'd have some kind of a pie. My dad and mom both like pumpkin pie, so usually it was a pumpkin pie. Personally, I prefer fruit pies like apple or like cherry. But outside of that, usually Thanksgiving was just a day to relax. You know, some years I would go game. You know, go play some games in my my room while you know all the smells of Thanksgiving were filling the house, which is really awesome. You know, some years I watched television with my parents when we were waiting for the food to cook. You know, more relaxing day, not anything too crazy. But that's about it. Did we ever traditionally watch the Thanksgiving Day parade? Sometimes if it was on, we would watch it. We don't always watch it, you know. Nothing too big like that. So, okay. Looks like, hold on a second. I just want to see if this is a troll. Yep. I'm just going to ignore it. Not even going to read it. This person still hasn't figured out that I'm not going to give them the time of day. Okay. Matthew Cooley asked the following. He says, I'm a longtime viewer. Since your original Modern Warfare 2 playthrough way back in the day, I must have been only 10 years old at the time. My friend next door showed me your videos, and we found them hilarious. Ever since then, I've been a fan of yours, so I have two questions. First of all, how do you feel when you hear people like me who grew up watching your content as a part of their childhood? It must be very surreal. What are your thoughts? It is. Like, I don't think of it like that. Again, you know, over a decade ago when I was making videos, I was just dicking around. I wasn't thinking this is anything serious. This is anything anyone's going to remember, anyone's going to care about. And then somehow it took off and people liked it. And I ended up being pretty notable on the internet as a content creator for video games for a while there. To hear the people, I was 10 years old and now I'm in my mid-20s. And I just want to stop by and say, hey, I watch your stuff from time to time. Thanks. You know, wow. That's insane because, you know, that's a giant time span to have been making content and to be known for. While for me, you know, I was in my mid to late 20s and I'm 40. And I'll be honest, like, here's the thing. When you were 10 years old, your life dramatically changed from the date that you were 10 years old to the date that you're now like 24, right? For me, from the date that, you know, I was 25, 26 to now, not much has changed in my life. You know what I mean? I mean, where I live, it has. My family life has. But look at me. I mean, I lost a little bit of weight. I got older. But for the most part, I've been an adult. I've been the same mindset. You know what I mean? Like, I'm getting more mature. I'm definitely becoming a better person, I feel. I'm not an asshole like I was back then. But at the same time, it's not like, oh my God, I completely transformed and grew up and had all these things happen to me. You know, I wasn't going through a giant, insanely life changes or anything like that. You know what I mean? So for me, those 14 years, whoop, time flies, right? But for you, it's probably like such a long time of your life, a big formative time. And, it's a different perspective. You see what I'm saying? But yeah, it blows my mind whenever people say shit like that. And I'm like, damn, I really have been making content for that. I mean, next year is my 15-year anniversary as a content creator. It feels like just yesterday I was putting out shirts that said 10-year anniversary. And here we are, we're about to hit 15. It's insane, isn't it? It's pretty nuts. Second question from Matthew. He says, you used to have a segment on your show that was called Back in the Day. You used to tell stories from, back in the day. That was a great segment. Would you ever consider bringing it back? I would, but what I would need is some guidance on what people would want to ask. You know what I'm saying? Like, if without knowing exactly what people are looking for as a question to be answered, then I can't really give you the answer. You know what I mean? So, if we had a show where there's a bunch of topics to talk about, and I have a segment or a story from back in the day to reiterate with you guys, then I would do that. But it's not like, back then I used to do a podcast that it was not the kind of podcast I do today. It was more a podcast with, it was once a month. It was set topics. And one of the segments was back in the day where I would try to tell you a story about when I was younger. If we maybe moving forward, like I said, what we might do is diversify my content a little bit. Maybe I'll do a different kind of podcast once a week or maybe something like that. We have topics that are pertinent or whatever. Got to think about it. Okay. All right. Continuing on. James Chun, his name's probably just James Chun, asked the following. I've heard an argument that games are part of a long series like sports titles, Call of Duty, Yakuza, Souls games, etc. They shouldn't be reviewed by someone unless they've actually had a personal history with said series. Do you think it would be silly for someone to truly review a game like Street Fighter 6 who didn't actually play any of the past titles? Another note, I think all reviewers should have to disclose how much of the game that they actually play along with their reviews. I agree with you. It seems like many reviewers don't actually finish the game or just rush due to deadlines. Your thoughts? If you're going to review a game and you're doing it for your own personal channel on YouTube, all right, then you know what? It doesn't matter because people are coming to you for your opinion. You understand? For example, if I review Street Fighter 6, people are looking for Phil's opinion on Street Fighter 6. You know me, you know my history with Street Fighter, etc. The problem really comes into play when it's these people who are reviewing these games for a large media company like IGN, like GameSpot, like Kotaku, and their review now gets into an aggregate calculated formula for a website like Metacritic, and their review could literally swing vote the overall feeling about a game that the public sees, okay? So many times over the years that I've been a content creator, I've seen one of these mainstream sites assign someone to review a game who has absolutely positively no experience with the game franchise and or already has a predetermined bias against it. All right, some examples. A decade ago, a guy by the name of Mitch was contracted by IGN to do an independent review of the game Double Dragon Neon. Double Dragon Neon was a game that was designed to be an homage to the classic Double Dragon games. So if you liked classic Double Dragon, you likely were going to like the game. If you never played it or didn't like them, you probably would not like the game. Mitch reviewed the game for IGN, gave it a low rating, and in his review outright states he doesn't like retro games. They're too difficult. They're not modernized enough. He didn't like that this game played like a retro game. That was the purpose of the game. But he missed the entire point and gave it a low review score. And that review score hit the aggregate reviews and actually dropped the overall review score of Double Dragon Neon. So do you understand what I'm saying here is that if you're going to have someone review the game that's for one of these sites that's definitely going to have their opinion weighed into an aggregate score like Metacritic, you have to be sure that the person who's reviewing it knows what they're doing. You see? You shouldn't have someone who's never played a first-person shooter then review a first-person shooter, or if you're going to, have them review it and have that be a separate review from the official review your absolutely supposedly respectable journalistic site is putting out on the internet as the absolute review you're giving that game. It's bullshit. It's irresponsible, and they shouldn't do it. All right? Now, everyone has a right to review a game. That's fair. But what's supposed to happen is it's supposed to be an editor. An editor is supposed to be the person who edits before that content goes out to the public. What happens is so often the editors of these journalism websites are hacks. They don't actually do what they're supposed to do. Another job of an editor, you're supposed to take someone's review and you're supposed to score it appropriately. So for example, let's say someone did a game review of Sonic Frontiers and they said, the game plays well, I like the story, I like the gameplay elements, but by the way, the graphics are terrible. The pop-in is shit. 10 out of 10. What? But your review outright says the graphics are shit. How can you put out a review that says 10 out of 10? That doesn't even make sense. The editor's job is to step up and say, no, you can't do that. So the moment that the editor got the review from Mitch and said, oh, he outright admits in his game review he doesn't like retro games. This is a game meant to be an homage to a retro game. Maybe this review shouldn't be our official review. It was the editor's job to do that. The editor didn't do that because the editor also is a hack. So now you got a reviewer who shouldn't be reviewing a game and a person not doing their job, and it just becomes a big cloud of shit. Okay? So that's really the problem when it comes to these reviews these days. All right? You have to have someone, if you're going to be reviewing it, and you have a shred of credibility, responsibility, you know what I'm saying? You have to make sure that what you're doing is going to be responsible to the game, because you could have a game that, a smaller game that gets destroyed because IGN gave it a low review when the review isn't even fucking valid. You know what I'm saying? Now, your second half here, you're saying you think reviewers should have to disclose how much of the game they actually played. 1,000,000% yes. If you were going to review a game for any site, and even for your own, like me when I review a game, I should be fully disclosing to you how long I played that game and what content I did and all of that. It was actually revealed earlier this year, in January of this year, there was someone who writes reviews for major gaming sites who got into an argument on Twitter. And in the argument, they outright posted and then deleted it later. But here's what they posted, and I'm going to paraphrase it. Oh, you guys don't even know. You're so ridiculously unfair with your criticisms. You'd be shocked to know how many official game reviewers for sites don't even finish the games. And then when someone came back, snapped back at him and said, what are you talking about? You're actually putting out a review score without beating the game? Yeah, don't you understand? We're literally given a review code sometimes 24 to 48 hours before the review is due and told to fully review it. How could we possibly do that? So we lie. We rush through the game and we put out a review that has the impression we beat it when we don't, but we're just doing our best guess. That's the best we can do in the industry. And you have to understand it's a dog-eat-dog world out there, and this is what we have to do our jobs. He posted that all on Twitter and then immediately within a day deleted the whole thread. Reason being, guess what happened? All his bosses, everyone in the industry contacted and said, dude, what are you doing? You're fucking blowing up our spot. Like, you can't do that. So this is what I mean. These reviewers absolutely should have to be required to disclose, okay, so I played Elden Ring, but I only did the main course. I didn't do any of the side content. I didn't do any of the extra dungeons. I played for 40 hours, not for 80. They should absolutely have to do that. Some of them already do. They're not required to, but some of them already go out of their way to do that, but they all should. They all absolutely should. Let's continue on. Our next question is from the Geek Generalist. Geek Generalist asks the following. He says, Phil, I am a longtime fan and a follower. This is actually my first time ever asking you a question. This one is about Konami and this new trend that they seem to have started since their decline years back. Seems that as the time goes by, all Konami is now doing is riding the coattails of the people that they used to work for them. And they want to start their own thing. You probably have heard of the game Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. It had an incredible Kickstarter. Then 1 month before it was going to be released, Konami decides, hey, let's release the Castlevania Anniversary Collection, the original games those people making Bloodstained had made, but Konami still owns the rights to. Then there's this other crowdfunding indie game from a no-name indie studio in Montreal. They made Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, which is, again, as you guys know, I played it this year. It's an homage to the old Ninja Turtles arcade beat-em-up games. Well, Konami says, hey, let's release the Cowabunga Collection right before the game to try to take the wind out of its sails. Well, actually, it's not true. The Cowabunga Collection came out, a month and a half after? So the new game came out first. That's good, because I feel the new game had time to shine. And then those who were real fans of Ninja Turtles like me bought the collection. We had that pizza party. Remember how fun that was? That was really fun. Okay. He says, next, there's a game called Euden Chronicles, made by two pillars of the Suikoden community, but now they're remaking Suikoden 1 and 2 in a remastered collection almost again as if in tandem. So you see the pattern here, right? I'm basically asking about your opinion here on Konami's behavior. You probably gave your opinion about this at some point, but in light of the information that we're witnessing and the difference between trendsetter and trend follower, do you think that there's something wrong or about coattailing on smaller guys who work their butts off into making new IPs that would be nostalgic to fans? I mean, let's put it this way. Yeah, of course, right? Morally, yes, this is annoying. Konami sits on their fucking franchises, does nothing with them, right? Makes no new games, sits around on their ass doing nothing, and then all of a sudden, oh, well, someone who used to work on their games wants to make a new game that's kind of like the spiritual successor, right? They drum up new interest in that genre of game. So then Konami says, oh, look, let's do a quick collection, right? Low effort, slaps together a collection, releases it for like $40, and rides the coattails of the popularity. And let's be honest, yes, it's working. Because every time they're doing this, they're making money. You're absolutely right. People bought that Castlevania collection. People bought that Kawabunga collection. People do it every time. Okay? So that being said, you know, morally it's fucked up. Yes, it is. Absolutely. Okay? At the same time, there's nothing legally wrong with doing it. They own those IPs. You know what I'm saying? They have the right, whenever they want, with whatever timing they want, to bring back those games, to release collections. They absolutely are in the right. They own the games. They're the company that has the rights to the intellectual property, and they can revive it or renew it or re-release it at any time, while the talent that they were contracted to make said games and properties don't own the rights to it. You know, the talent has the right to go off and make their own deal, right? Like they're doing. So absolutely, it's what it is. Is it underhanded practice? Yes, it is. It's kind of a shame because you definitely, as a gamer, you know, it's kind of like, what do you do? Because let's say you're like me. I'm a fan of Ninja Turtles, okay? I wanted to play the new game. I did. But at the same time, I had this idea of a marathon pizza party playing the collection because I knew that the Ninja Turtles Shredder game, Shredder's Revenge, probably wasn't going to be that long. You can't do a marathon of that. But you could do a marathon of a collection of Ninja Turtles games. So I have this idea, let's do a Ninja Turtles pizza party, let's do it. So I supported the attempt to make a new one, but I also supported the attempt to kind of showcase the classics. I kind of supported both sides of it, right? So, yeah, I mean, in some cases you might say, well, I just don't support Konami, then screw them. I'm not going to buy any of those collections. If you're someone like me who's a content creator, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. I want to highlight those classic games from my childhood and show them off to you guys. In the case of the Castlevania collection, those are games that I'd only really rented. I never beat, and I actually get to play through and beat them all for the first time with you guys because I bought the collection, right? So it really is a double-edged sword for gamers. What do you do, right? If anything, at least Konami seems like it's going slightly in the right direction. Now that they're remaking Silent Hill 2, they're making a brand new Silent Hill games. After having Silent Hill be completely dead for the absolute longest time, finally they're doing something with the franchise that the fans want. So at least they're not completely deaf to what the gamers and the community is demanding. But at the same time, yeah, it is kind of dirty and underhanded the way that they capitalize on everyone else's work too. But they have the right to do it. They own the stuff. You see? Okay. We still got some time. I said we still got about 15 minutes, so we take a break. So let's keep going. No shout-outs to do. Let's keep going with questions. Christian asked the following. Actually, it's Christian Coolman. I don't know if you remember. Recently, it was mentioned that Mickey Mouse will enter public domain in 2024. I wanted to know your thoughts on characters that are created in media, like books or movies, that after a certain amount of years, they become public domain. I feel like if a character was created by someone, they still have the rights, and they should keep those rights unless they choose to make them public domain, not by force, but because of law. Do you think that it's a good thing to have public domain or not? The original creator probably never gets credit for the creation. Thanks for reading my question and keep up the great work. You know, I don't know. It's weird. And thing is, I'm only answering this question based on the information as presented to me in the question. You see what I'm saying? I don't know public domain law. I don't know exactly what qualifies any kind of piece of creative work to be considered public domain. All right. So, I guess, thinking about it, it's weird. Like, we just had Winnie the Pooh become public domain, and immediately we got some guy who makes a horror movie where a guy dresses up as Winnie the Pooh and is slaughtering people, right? So obviously that's not really Winnie the Pooh. I think everyone knows that. Is it right that the guy could use the name Winnie the Pooh or just Pooh in general and make that movie? It's a little weird, especially when kids know Winnie the Pooh as a cute cartoon character, right? Savory, educational in a lot of cases, entertaining. Some kids learn life lessons from the Winnie the Pooh cartoons. And now are you corrupting that? Are you bastardizing that in a way? Because you're using that property, that character. What if a kid who's interested in Winnie the Pooh cartoons goes online and finds the horror movie, right? So, I don't know. It's interesting. Also, I got to think of other things that may be hitting public domain soon. Like, wasn't Superman created in the early 1900s? And he, they had him fighting in world wars and stuff. Will Superman eventually be public domain and anyone can make a fucking Superman movie? Right? Like, I don't know how it works exactly. It seems like if there's something that has an active properties going, right? Like Superman's still being moved. They're making new movies with Superman. Apparently Henry Cavill's going to resume the role. Then would they have the ability to then say, well, I'm now doing something Superman 2 that runs parallel to the official new Superman? I don't understand it. You know what I mean? Randy Ditcher says, actually, the old Superman cartoons already are public domain, and people can just do whatever they want with old Superman cartoons. It's hard for me to make an educated statement when I don't understand how public domain works. Dark Magus says, I loved Alice in Wonderland as a kid. I love American McGee's Alice games as well. So maybe there's an example of how something could be more child-friendly but then made more adult-friendly later. I don't know. It's confusing. Do I want to see a character like Superman get completely bastardized and ruined by some asshole? No, I don't. At the same time, it's legal. So it's just weird. I guess the best way I could describe it for me, that's just weird. Like knowing that there's actually a Winnie the Pooh horror movie is fucking weird. It's just, obviously it's not in the spirit of the same character and the same the idea, the intention behind it. It's confusing and weird, and I don't know. I don't know if I agree with it, but certainly if it's illegal, it's allowed. I guess there's not much we can do about it, right? I, for one, will be standing outside of the Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey movie premiere with a protest sign saying, stop ruining the IP. Actually, I think the movie's already out, so I'm a little late for that. Dark Magus says, I think it's the thing of seeing the love for the original, which I don't see in the Winnie the Pooh movie. So you're saying, with the horror movie, they don't give a fuck about the original. There's no love for the source material. It's exploitation. Yeah, and that can be a problem. If it's public domain, anyone can exploit it to be anything they want, right? Yeah, and that I see a problem with. Because then you could actually ruin the idea or the spirit behind that IP to begin with, right? Okay, from Hero4535, he says, Phil, do you sometimes miss replaying games that you know you will enjoy simply because you're a streamer? Yes. When I was growing up in the 90s, there were certain games that are synonymous with my youth and growing up as a gamer. Games like Super Mario World, Legend of Zelda Link to the Past, Final Fantasy 2 and 3, which now are called 4 and 6, but also to some extent 5, which I actually played for the first time in the early 2000s, and I really like. Chrono Trigger, Earthbound, the Suikoden series, if it's Suikoden or Suikoden, I don't know how to pronounce it. That's just off the top of my head. But those are some of the ones that I grew up playing. And at any moment, I'd probably be very happy to just say, I'd like to play those again. And just sit down and play them. And some of those games, I actually did regularly go back to and play every few years, whether there was a new version. Like, for example, first it was on SNES. Then a lot of those they put into PlayStation collections, maybe a handheld. Like, remember the Nintendo Game Boy Advance had a lot of those games ported to it. So I had some of them on there. Then they would be ported to the DS. I would play them on there. And then, of course, on modern consoles sometimes. But some of them, there ends up being a big gap between the ability to play them because of, when you can play them. And some of them I emulated as well on PC back in the day because it was the only way you could play them at the time. Since I became a content creator and this is my job, I find it harder to replay games, Like if I wanted to replay a Final Fantasy Classic, well, I just played Final Fantasy 4 and 6 in the last, 5 years, I believe. So to go back and play them again, people are going to be like, dude, you just played it. They're not going to change it. Then why are you going to play it again, right? So I hear you on that. Luckily, during the summer of retro, I did replay Legend of Zelda Link to the Past. Last time I played it was 2013. Here I am 9 years later. I was able to play it again and really, really enjoy replaying it for a different kind of audience because it was very interactive. But what's the gimmick of playing that game again in another 5 to 10 years when I've already done it for a live audience and interactive? What's the next thing? I don't know, right? So yes, it is frustrating because before I was a content creator, I definitely had the flexibility and the time and the ability to go back and play the classics, and I don't really have that opportunity that much anymore. At the same time, when I do get an opportunity like I just had with the Summer of Retro, you can bet your ass I take advantage and I really enjoy it, and I had a good time this last summer. Derek has asked a question. Derek, it is your time to shine. I don't know if you're still here. Derek was here earlier. I don't know if he's still here anymore. But Derek, it's time to answer an Ask the King question for you. Here it is. He says, I had my Thanksgiving in October, but here in Canada, happy Thanksgiving to you today in the United States. I have 2 questions. The first is, what were some of your favorite video games as a kid that you played in the 80s and 90s? I literally just answered that question. I'm not even kidding. I just did. Like I said, all those classics I just brought up. So to reiterate, Super Mario World, Legend of Zelda Link to the Past, Final Fantasy 2 and 3, which are known as 4 and 6, also 5, which I played later, Chrono Trigger, Earthbound, stuff like that. I would also say Street Fighter was huge. I played the original Street Fighter 2 and then Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting on the SNES, and I played the living shit out of those games back in the day. Yeah. So those are the ones. Now, his second question, what are you most thankful for this year? I already said this on the podcast, but I'll reiterate since you're asking again. Most grateful, I would probably say, for my health and for my family, all right? Because without health, I can't enjoy anything in life. And my family really is my rock. My wife is the one who's there for me every day. She's the one who I spend the most time with outside of streaming. I absolutely love my life with her, and she's amazing. Now, when you're talking the professional side of things, obviously, I'm incredibly grateful for you guys, for you checking out my content, supporting it every day in the various ways that you do, giving me the massive constructive criticism you have recently given me of how to improve, how to change, how to add new stuff to the rotation that makes sense, to be a better person and a better content creator. Just recently, getting important feedback like, dude, Phil, you're just over the top with the asking for contributions and stuff. Can you stop? And I've tried to stop. Now, I'm trying to improve myself for the better. And I hope you guys have seen the changes and they're, me trying to reflecting on myself and trying to be a better person and a better content creator for you. Okay. All right. So we have one more series of questions from members. Once I answer this, then we'll go on a break and we come back. We're going to have forum questions and we're going to have Twitter questions. And that's the conclusion of our show. All right. So our final members question, as you can see, I told you guys, members really make up the majority of the questions here on the show. And here we are, 2/3 of the show, is member questions. All right. So final question is from Slayer. Thank you, Slayer, for these questions. Question number 1. The first question is, seeing that you watched the different ad songs for K-pop recently, I was wondering, what are your thoughts on the theme of the song and the product that they're advertising, and whether it works in selling the product they're advertising, or at least makes the advertisement song memorable? If you don't know what he's talking about, I filmed my private react videos for patrons this last Monday, and one of the things he had me react to was a montage of commercials that actually had K-pop songs made specifically for them to advertise a particular product. Products range from automobiles to soft drinks to airlines, phone plans, many different products, okay? Now, what's funny about this is that on American television, right, for the most part, when we have an advertisement that's on TV, even if it has a celebrity or a musician in it, technically that's just meant to be an ad for TV to advertise a product. For a lot of the stuff that I saw with these K-pop groups, a lot of this was more, it sounded like a song. It sounded like they were singing just a normal K-pop song. And it was very hard to even determine if that was meant to be an advertisement or not, or if it was just a K-pop song they were playing, and they just happened to license that song to be used in a commercial for a product. You know, I saw, no exaggeration, BTS and many other groups running up and having a Pepsi, or it said Pepsi in the background, or they're drinking a Pepsi, but the song they're singing has nothing to do with Pepsi, okay? There were some of the songs that were weird because, like, the song they were singing had nothing to do with the product placement, but because of the visual. Like, for example, there was one, it was a bunch of K-pop girls, and they all had glasses on. Come to find out, it was an ad for glasses, but nothing in the song talked about glasses. So you would never know that it was a glasses ad unless you were paying attention to the visuals, you see? So it was kind of interesting, because if anything, I think what happened is you could see the contrast of advertisement between the United States and how we operate and how, you know, Singapore operates. Or not Singapore, excuse me, Korea operates. Because obviously in Korea, the artist, the music, is the priority. And if you can get people hooked on an artist or the music they make, then you could tie a product into said ad and maybe try to get something sold as a result of them liking that product or content. You see what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that anyone tuned into that to see the Pepsi. But maybe because they saw BTS or that other group doing the good song with the Pepsi, now they think in my head, oh, I need some Pepsi. And then they go out and bought it, you see? Do I really believe that someone went out and bought a car because in a video they showed a bunch of K-pop stars driving the car or the vehicle? No, I don't believe that. A car is a huge financial investment in your life. You have to plan for it. I don't think anyone made a spur-of-the-moment decision. I absolutely need to go buy myself a Hyundai because I saw it in an ad. You know, that's kind of ridiculous. Now, the second half of Slayer's question is regard to Singapore, which is why I said Singapore by accident. So my second question is that recently you saw a video, again, it was the other video that I reacted to for Slayer, private patron video, about a tour guide trip through Singapore. You enjoyed and even praised it. I'm wondering, what are your overall thoughts on Singapore as a travel destination? What are your thoughts on the country in general based on what you heard in the video? And would you travel there? Thanks, and I hope to hear your in-depth response to the questions. So, Singapore. By watching this tourism video about it, seems to be the kind of place that I would like to visit, except for one reason. So allow me to elaborate. It has a lot of touristy kind of stuff that I would like. Outdoor gardens, nature, shopping, some museums, which I like, and food. A good variety of food. You can get the more down-home kind of local vendor food that you get from a local restaurant, but you could also get a lot of high-end dining there as well. The prices in Singapore are cheaper than in America. The dollar, $1 American dollar is worth about 70, well, let's try that again. One Singaporean dollar is worth about 75 American cents. That means the dollar's worth more. And some of the things, like, for example, they were showing hotel rooms. They were like, you get a mid-range hotel room for, like, less than $100 a night. In some cases, 50 to 70. Like, whoa, really? Because anywhere else, you know, in America, you try to go touristy places, you're talking $200-300 a night for the hotel room, if not more. So you're telling me you could really go here on a budget to Singapore, and as long as you're planning things out during the right, you know, non-height of tourism season, you could probably have a pretty good vacation with food, tourism, a good hotel for cheap. That's cool, okay? Another thing that I really, really liked about Singapore is that they're serious about their laws when it comes to things like crime, like littering, and even just like, you know, crimes and harassment. Like they said, Singapore is a very, very low crime country. It's very clean. You don't see shit all over the street, no litter. Gum is outlawed. They outlawed gum because too many people were sticking gum all over the fucking country. So they outlawed it entirely, which is pretty crazy to think about. So they don't fuck around. They even said they don't just let people go and stay. Like here in the United States, someone could come to the U.S. and say, oh, I'm coming for tourism, and then never leave and never get kicked out. There, you need to show them your return ticket home in order to even enter the country. How crazy is that? Pretty nuts, right? So they don't fuck around there. And that, for a lot of reasons, I actually feel that's, a nice place to stay, right? To live, I don't know. To stay temporarily, maybe, right? But the one thing, the absolute one thing that kills the whole thing for me, the weather. The weather in Singapore is tropical. It's between 75 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit on average, and it is very humid. That essentially is Florida-like weather. That is not weather that I like. I've been to Florida. I did not enjoy the weather. It was horrible. I went to Florida during the summer. It was fucking torture. It really was terrible. Okay? So, for me, the one trade-off would be the weather. First of all, I would have to go there at a time of the year when it's not the hottest. And, you know, definitely you would think probably that if I was going there at a time when it wasn't the hottest, that's maybe when a lot of the tourism would show up. Because no one wants to go there when it's the absolute hottest and it's unbearable, right? Yeah, I don't know. Like, the thing is, you'd be like, oh, wow, what a great place for tourism and walking around. Except for me, if I'm walking around in 85-degree humid weather, my entire body would be completely soaked in sweat, disgusting. You know what I mean? Like, oh, there's so many nice things there. The trade-off is that the weather is terrible. So, you know, as someone who's personally gone to Florida for multiple vacations in my life and gone through that, I really don't know if I want to do that again. But everything else sounds good to me, except the freaking weather. Okay? All right, guys, it is time for our second break. For those of you watching live on stream, this will just be a brief break of maybe 5 minutes or so. For those of you on demand watching, this is the end of part 2. When we come back, we've got forum questions and Twitter questions and patron shoutouts. And that's the end of the show. So, I shall be back shortly with the conclusion of Ask the King. Thank you all very much for enjoying. I'm only going to be gone for a few minutes. I'd urge you, please don't leave too long if you're on stream. Stick around so you don't miss the last part. Thanks, and I'll be back in just a bit.